All right. Hi there. I'm Dr. Kate Walker, and today I'm going to cover common supervisor mistakes, and they may not be what you think they are. If you've been in any of my groups or heard me talk, I talk about things like orientation, remediation, evaluation, termination. I have a very sort of pat answer or the same answer to most mistakes, because I go back to this idea that documentation is everything. And if you haven't taught it, you can't evaluate it. And if you haven't evaluated it, then how can you remediate it? So I believe in a good contract that is clear and is very transparent, because you have to be a good communicator and start that relationship off with trust. But today I'm going to talk about things a little bit differently because I attended a supervisor consultation group that I facilitate called Texas Supervisor Coalition Consultation Group. And our speaker on Monday was Kenda Dalrymple, an Austin attorney who has been key in things like sunset review and the 4-year rules review. She has been key to the changes, the positive changes that have come about with the formation of BHEC. And so I love having her as a speaker because she makes a living representing licensees, not just our license, not just LPC, LMFT, psychologists, social workers, even in the medical field, pharmacists who have had complaints filed against them. So she not only knows the rules, she knows the practical side. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. So I've got my notes in front of me. Flipping it over so I can actually see it. Dun, dun, dun. Edit, edit, edit. So when I go back, maybe I'll edit this out. Maybe not. Maybe you'll hear me turning pages. And so the two areas that kind of slammed me in the head were paperwork and money. So with paperwork, what she said was your supervision note should be as detailed as a client note, a note that you take for your client sessions. Now, I'm one of those people who's always preached, make those client notes super vague. You don't want to have that come back to bite you in the butt if you get a subpoena. And Kenda's basically saying the opposite, be as detailed as possible. Now, you have to remember, she's coming from the point of view of an attorney who defends licensees against complaints. And so, of course, she wants those notes detailed because she wants to defend you. She wants to make sure that there's evidence that what you say happened. So when I look at this idea of the supervision note, another thing I preach, if you have attended my courses, is this idea of making your supervisee take the note. Well, you still have to sign it. So that means you have to look at it. One of the things I give folks is a nice template. And so whether you use mine or create one of your own, I think a template might help solve that problem, because I don't want to give you a problem if I'm not going to also give you a solution. But having a template that shows you covered these cases, that you talked about these rules, that you gave this homework and then checked it, that you scheduled this as a follow-up for an agenda for the following week. That kind of a supervision note is something that's very, very clear. It's detailed. It's something that an outside person, say a staff member working for BHEC or LPC board, could easily take a look at and say, oh, yes, I can see that the supervisor covered this rule. Back when the complaints hearings were open, that was the number one thing that I heard as the liaison for the Texas Association for Counselor Education and Supervision to the LPC board. When I was sitting in those meetings so I could go report back to my organization, whenever there was a complaint against a supervisor, the investigator would always say, we pulled the notes, we perused the notes, we checked the notes, and we did not see anywhere in the supervision notes, not the client notes, the supervision notes, where the supervisor taught this rule. Now, I'm always rooting for the supervisor, so I'm assuming the supervisor taught the rule, but he or she didn't write it down. So if you have in your notes template a section that clearly says, this is the rule I talked about today, 681 point blah, blah. We talked about this. We talked about things that might happen if, right? If you're just doing supervision and doing case after case after case and troubleshooting, I can see where you might fall into that if you have a lot of supervisees, if you're working in a very intense setting or agency. But here's my big but. If you are not covering what the rules say you must cover, then you're just operating in reaction crisis mode, right? And that's not good for you. It's not good for your supervisee to learn, right? They're coming to you for an experience that's very broad, it's very rich, it's very thick. And so that's sometimes as supervisors, we have to check ourselves, right? We're not going to match our supervisee's energy. We're not going to match the energy of our agency and be crisis, right? And if you feel yourself getting pulled into that, that can be a problem that leads to mistakes. Okay, problem number 2 has to do with money. Now, if you are never, ever going to supervise an associate in private practice, I guess you can tune me out right now. But I'm telling you, this is coming. And even if you have an associate who, as a level 3, comes to you and says, please, can I just take on 2 clients in my own little virtual private practice? I promise it won't be a big deal. You may say yes, right? Because they built some rapport with you. So the thing that Kenda talked about on Monday was actually taxes. She said one of the things that she would always require of a supervisee who wants to be in their own self-employed private practice is that they have their own CPA, certified public accountant. She goes, I wouldn't take them on if they weren't willing to have a CPA. And her point was, we have a schedule of sanctions for BHEC and LPC and LMFT, right? Level 1 infraction all the way to a level 5 infraction. And I always forget which one is the most severe. So let's say least severe might be, missing a supervision note, right? But we stress about that. We stress about having and making sure we have that. Well, think about not paying your taxes. I mean, that's federal prison. Yes, it might be one where, Martha Stewart went, but that's jail time. So a CPA who can help your self-employed LPC associate estimate quarterly taxes, pay quarterly taxes, set aside money, make sure that they have separate bank accounts, make sure that they're doing, can you imagine the load off of your mind, right? Because you're trying to just cover the clinical parts of owning your own practice. So Kenda is saying, and I see where she's coming from, your supervisee is going to manage money well or poorly. And you're going to be a great supervisor and cover the clinical aspects of operating your own practice. Well, that's a Grand Canyon-sized gap. And if your supervisee doesn't have a certified public accountant and they're expecting you to do that, that's a no-go, right? At least it would be for me, right? I'm not an attorney. I'm not a CPA. I say that all the time. So money and paperwork. The last thing had to do with communication. And it's interesting to me because I always say in my 40-hour training to become an LPC or an LMFT supervisor in Texas, I don't teach you how to be a boss. But here's an example. So the contract, for instance, right? There's really nothing in our rules that says how the contract has to be formatted. But in my course, I insist that you create bullet points. So if you've ever created a contract for me and one of the graders came back and said, hey, this paragraph thing is not going to work, it's not because there's a rule that says you must have bullet points. It's because nobody reads the contract. You've heard me say this before. When a new grad student, newly graduated, or maybe still in their last semester, never had a supervisor before, not even licensed yet, is coming to you and saying, will you please be my supervisor? and you're thinking and you're interviewing and you're doing all those things that you're supposed to do because you're an amazing supervisor, and you come to the consultation groups and you're part of all the communities that enrich us as supervisors, and you're like, yeah, okay. And then you hand them this 5-page document that's paragraph filled that, your eyes water because of all the legalese and $1 million words you threw in there. They're going to say, okay, and they're going to sign it. That's not a great way to start off any relationship, much less one that's going to last 18 months to 5 years. So when I talk about bullet points, it's because that transparency starts now. And if you are, and this was Kenda's example, if you're married to the idea of having an 8 a.m. Group consultation supervision once a month at the local, bagel shop where everybody sits around and talks about ethics, and that is just a cornerstone of your supervision, and you've buried that somewhere in that paragraph, well, the day that your supervisee comes and says, well, I got 3 kids, Saturday morning's the only morning that I get to sit and watch cartoons with them. Clash, right? And when you have a clash with your supervisee, if you're not able to confront that conflict openly, or you do something that ruptures the relationship, then that supervisee may hide things from you. Right. And as a supervisor, I can hear you right now. Well, then I'll just do this, and then I'll just do that. Okay, simmer down now. The idea is to grow this little person or this little adult or this person into your colleague. That's why we have the contract. We don't want to put in something that they're going to miss because they didn't read the fine print, right? If you buy a new car and you go home and it falls apart and the dealership says, well, you should have seen in paragraph 14AB/52 that doesn't make you feel good. That doesn't make you want to go back to the car dealership. Transparency starts with the contract. And so Kenda talked about this idea that you must be a great communicator. You must be a boss. You must have that fine balance between doormat and bully, right? We call that assertive communication. We teach it to our clients, where you're able to talk to your supervisee before they sort of go covert on you and they just start showing up to supervision going, no, it's fine. No, all my clients are fine. Nope. You know what? It's a breeze. This counseling thing's super easy. And you're like, your supervisor hackles are like going, spidey senses are going off. You're like, nah, that doesn't sound right. Or, and I've heard of this when I do my coaching and consulting with supervisors, you end up with a bully. I've seen supervisors bullied by their supervisees, right? Because it's this, well, you better get it fixed. Well, the next time we talk about this, you better. And then the supervisee doesn't show up. They're not getting their 4 hours of supervision. And I know you may be sitting there thinking, well, that would never happen to me. That would never happen to me. Well, it might, right? Those either extreme, right? The one who goes covert or the one who just turns into, what are you going to do about it? I'll just dump you and go to another supervisor. The idea is, if you take responsibility for how you communicate and say, I, supervisor, raise your right hand, right? I'm going to be transparent. I'm going to be clear. And I'm going to, as Stephen Covey says, begin with the end in mind. That doesn't mean you can't change your mind, right? Let's go back to that contract. What I teach is the contract is less of a contract and more of a memorandum of understanding. It's malleable, it's changeable. And like your consent for treatment with your clients, you can change it as long as you have a conversation about it, right? Talk to your supervisee. Hey, I've been thinking about starting this group on Saturday mornings. What do you think? Well, I can't come. All right. Well, what can we do instead, right? So you're having a conversation with this person and not getting your feelings hurt because they're not doing what you want them to do because you feel like it's best. And don't just listen to me. I've done some interviews on my YouTube channel. You can go hear me interview Amanda Esquivel. She's in a lot of our Facebook groups. I know she would welcome, talking to you more. I want to say that I'm not going to speak for you, Amanda. I'll edit this part out. But my point is, there are lots of great supervisors out there who will sit down with you and help you understand how they did it. There's a consultation group starting soon. Again, if you're watching this or listening to this on a replay, it may have already started, but for new supervisors. So that's a wonderful way to start your practices, listening to how other people do that. So if you're not on social media, if you're just watching this on the replay in your Kate Walker Training profile, and you're like, Kate, I don't like social media, that's okay. Google it, right? Get in there and Google supervisor consultation groups, places where you can lay eyes on another person and ask questions. Come to our coaching call once a month. I'm actually going to change the time. So hopefully, we'll get more people who are stepping uppers to attend, changing that to noon. But ask questions. All right. So we've talked about notes, making sure that you're detailed, use a good template, show what you would want an investigator to see, right? I covered this. We talked about this. I made sure we covered half of the clients, a quarter of the clients, most of the clients, all of the clients today. Money, know what you don't know, and tell your supervisee to get professional guidance, certified public accountant or business attorney. We talked about having great communication skills, not okay communication skills. Think like a boss, talk like a boss. Don't be a bully, don't be a doormat. Talk to your supervisees in a way that is clear. Make sure that what you put in writing is clear so that relationship, when it does have conflicts, because this is like, a relationship, it's something that you have to navigate ups and downs. There's going to be forming, storming, norming, transforming, all the things as this supervisee progresses from level 1 to level 2 to level 3. If you're not familiar with those terms, please Google developmental models of supervision. A level 2 supervisee is actually supposed to rebel against you. Like, that's normal. They're supposed to push back. You don't remediate it away. The other thing, I kind of want to put this as a period at the end of the whole remediation, communication conversation. Oh my gosh, I'm rhyming way too much. Is this idea of an abrupt termination with your supervisee. And Kenda made it a point to say, if your supervisee does something egregious, puts your license in danger, puts their clients in danger. She gave an example of a complaint brought against a supervisee who had decided to go off their meds and had a manic episode, and in the middle of the night was calling clients and screaming at them, leaving these long voicemails that clients were waking up to in the morning. She fired that supervisee without remediating. And Kenda's point was, I would rather see you terminate a troubled or troublesome supervisee and face a complaint later, because I can defend you against that, right? If you have good notes and you're documenting exactly what happens and you have the grace to take care of the clients first, you manage their communicating with them, transitioning them to another therapist. She goes, I can defend you with that kind of documentation than to hang on to a supervisee who just is going against every direction you give them, won't follow through on your directives, blows through remediation plan after remediation plan after remediation plan, and turns into someone that you dread showing up to supervision for, right? If you ever find yourself thinking, oh my gosh, I wish they would just level up and get out of here, that's probably someone you need to gatekeep. And she made a point of saying, that little box that you can check no when you submit the experience requirements, you have that option, right? When you're filling out your part of the paperwork, you can check no. I don't believe this supervisee has the skills and abilities to become a counselor, right? Yes, they could retaliate against you, but Kenda's like, I can defend that. I can defend if you truly believe this person and you have the evidence to back it up. You've got these notes, you've got these evaluations, you have this remediation, you have all of these things that you've done that show that you tried. And now that you're done, they're done, you're done. or it's something egregious. Maybe for your level 1, there is no evaluation. There are only 2 supervision notes and no remediation plan, but you're like, you're fired, get out of here, because it was something that endangered your license and or the clients, which are essentially your clients. Okay. So I am going to turn off the recording and open it up for questions. So if you were looking for the Zoom link, it is in the Step It Up Facebook page. I'm trying to scoot my chair up. In the featured posts. If you are looking for the Zoom link in the Kate Walker Training, your profile there, you're going to need to log in, and you go to number 1, start here, and the link will be posted under the video. So I've got, hey, Mark, glad to see you. All right, I'm going to turn off the recording. Hang on. If you have questions, I'll answer them. So thanks for joining me. I'm Dr. Kate Walker for the Step It Up weekly group coaching. Today was all about supervisor mistakes and, of course, how to fix them. So recording is going.